the international community expects it to be advanced without doing your part to ensure that they have both the tools and the structure within which to work. So that leads me to the third point, which I may be jumping the gun, but you have to have a framework to work from. And in dealing with that framework, I think the most important thing is to understand that this whole process is not about us, the international side. The whole process really is about developing what's already there in the national side to deal effectively and to expectation with what we're asking them to do. And for that, I think you need to break it down the way we've broken it down in some of the writing that's been done. That is, you have to help them develop a strategic capacity, an operational capacity and environment, and a tactical capacity to accomplish these things. Now, we'll differ on how that's done, and we've experimented already with different ways of doing some of that. But I think one of the things that we neglect is looking at delivering a strategic capacity for being able to do what we're expected to do on the national level. And that may mean helping to develop institutions, but also legislation, but also modes of operating, and then operational capacity, which is giving people the tools, the resources, and in fact, maybe even international prosecutors and judges to help cut into the caseload, not to instruct or mentor, but just to help cut into a vast caseload to get the work done, which is, as Munir and Bakir and others and Mr. Dukic have said, is so critical because that's where this credibility gap exists, not getting things done. So again, I think stepping back and looking at it with a little larger framework like that is very important.
But is that larger framework, David, does it include the idea that by the ICTY's involvement, by these domestic prosecutions that are occurring, can you have a spillover effect in the laying the foundation for a strengthening of the rule of law in the region, in particular countries? You've said yourself that you cannot you cannot really build a viable criminal justice system in these regions on the back of the ICTY. Ivan, I think you've argued a little differently. You've suggested that, well, perhaps the capacity to build these war crimes prosecutions and trials, in fact, do have a positive impact on the national legal systems of themselves. And so, Georgia, I think you have also talked about this. So I want to take that then, David, a step further and say, well, can we say that the existence and the involvement of the ICTY, the focus on capacity building on the courts themselves or on the modalities that exist, have, in fact, a very positive effect more generally? Or is that just too much for us to say as part of the legacy of the ICTY?
Yeah, let me start very quickly. I think one of the problems is that over time we have built expectations that are way out of proportion with our ability to deliver. Expectations that we're going to get to everything and we're going to do everything. It's not possible. I know that from personal experience, number one. Number two, I think I'm not alone in believing that if you try to build viable national criminal justice systems generally on the back of war crimes prosecutions, investigations and prosecutions, Mark Osil has talked about this as well, you run the risk of creating expectations that will be disappointed, which will then injure or actually interfere with the development of a good general criminal justice system. These are very special kinds of cases. They are very special circumstances. They are the kinds of things that Mike McVicker and others who are involved in the U.S. system know would break the back of mature prosecution systems. They just have that kind of a load on them. So you have to be very careful about what you say we're trying to do by building an effective process for prosecuting war criminals or atrocity.
Yvonne, I want you, or Georgia, you too, and Norman, I want to ask you too, from the perspective of your involvement from the ICTY, do you see in your own experience and eyes that there is this spillover effect that's occurring? Georgia, you?
Thank you. Yes. I think if we look at the history in other cases, other tribunals, they certainly had an impact of one sort or another, whether within the constitutional framework, whether within the judicial reform, and so on and so forth, from case to case. But I think that certainly an impact from the tribunal on the national justice system can actually be seen. However, I agree with David that there is something specific about war crime prosecutions, and that cannot be the model for the whole system. But it can certainly contribute to the reform, and at least building also on what Shelley has said earlier, I think our approach is more and more integrated, seeing that war crime prosecutions or transitional justice measures should be part of the broader rule of law framework, so that if we do work in a post-conflict environment, we do want to do prosecutions or truth-telling alongside with the justice sector reform, which is happening in a number of places in the region as well. And I think that these efforts can, in fact, be very beneficial. In other words, that ICTY has, in fact, contributed and alerted the judiciary in a number of countries about the international law and how to apply it, and also in terms of procedural matters. Having said that, I don't think that ICTY would have a capacity to support, national institutions, especially line ministries that support these processes. This is perhaps something that UNDP, OSCE, and other partners would step in and are doing. In fact, I mean, this is our core mandate to build a capacity of institutions. However, from my own personal experience, I think that ICTY support for capacity building in the region was more than just training. It was, in my experience, it really involved building the channels of communications that are regular, information sharing, knowledge sharing. It was also paired with an outreach effort at the local level and, at a global level. So I think that kind of package has worked pretty well, and I think we should build on that.
Right. Ivan.
I would certainly agree that war crimes proceedings are specific, so you definitely cannot overhaul the entire judiciary borrowing from the experiences of war crimes trials or from the ICTY. But in fact, there could be a cross-fertilization and a positive impact. Again, it has to be assessed on a country-by-country basis. In Serbia, just to give you a few examples, some novelties that for the first time introduced in the war crimes trials now have become used by courts of ordinary jurisdiction. Witness Victim Support Service, for the first time established with the War Crimes Chamber in Belgrade, very much based on the experience of the ICT, well, almost entirely based on experience of the ICTY at the beginning. Then establishment of spokesperson services, some procedural novelties, lifting the limitation of transfer of proceedings to other jurisdictions. These are all examples of streaming from the experience of the war crimes chamber. But it also depends to some extent on whether the capacity building community or the donors are involved in capacity building in war crimes trials area or in area reform of other justice systems, so that they can use their own experiences from other area to apply them in another.
Okay. Norman, do you have any thoughts on this from your perspective in the ICTY?
Just a few to reiterate, which others have said as well, which is that I think the broader issue of whether or not the work of the ICTY and ultimately the legacy spills over in other areas in the region, including in the justice sector. And I think members of the panel who know better than I have spoke about the impact of that spillover. The point I wanted to just follow up on was the one already raised, which is that we are limited in the focus, at least from the OTP, that we're trying to look at in terms of providing support and handover of cases, as well as the work with the judges and local prosecutors in the region. And from our perspective, the starting point is the spillover every day of the individual work that's being done and the eventual capacity building. It didn't start with, as was mentioned, the ability to adopt our victim witness system or to try and adopt to that issue, to get access to our confidential material, to be able to prosecute both at the national level and then at the municipal levels. And so the spillover may not be into the other justice sectors as immediately or as soon as we want. And certainly there's a gap in terms of the other areas of civil society. But in terms of the work that they're doing, there's a spillover every day, at least we can see it. And just as an anecdote, we used to think that we always handed, and we did hand most of our material back to the state prosecutors, expecting them to carry on with it. But I note that at least in 2 cases, in 2 of the different regions, we've been informed by the state prosecutor's office of information and material and evidence that they've collected that we weren't aware of. So there is symbiotic relationship that shows that there is a development beyond the simple handing over of cases.
And that's an example of increased capacity, frankly. Our ability in Bosnia and Herzegovina to assist the ICTY in two very important cases, and the ICTY's acknowledgement that we have the ability to do that and actually coming down to draw on that expertise has been, I think, in the last year and a half, immensely valuable both to the ICTY and to Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have a working day-to-day ongoing relationship which is quite good and quite large.
Let me move then on that point. It was based on the work that Judge Pokar had done in 2008 on kind of lessons learned, focusing on this very important question that we're talking about in capacity building, but what process should we do? How should we engage in domestic capacity? What's the best, again, the best modality? And it may be seen as a minor issue, but it's one that I think there's an assumption that has been made that, for instance, to build the skills and capacity of judges and lawyers in these courts, it's important to have training sessions, important to have conferences. Judge Maloto talked about peer-to-peer discussions as being very important. Barbara in the U.S. Embassy has put in a tremendous amount of funding for training and workshops. Georgia UNDP has also focused in this area. But David, you, again, as the antagonist, I guess, on some of these issues have said, and I quote, when talking about these types of study programs, seminars, trainings, quote, more often than not, these are just mere movement that substitutes for substance. Such trips are often a waste of time and money, and they do very, very, very little. So when we're talking about legacy, you're welcome, David. Sorry to put you in that position. But I think it's important because we take for granted that these types of educational programs, training programs, seminar conferences that all of us have been engaged in are actually a fundamental part of lessons learned, of what we should be doing, what the legacy should be doing in the future. Is that the right assumption to make? Are these things, are these working?
Well, for one, I don't disagree with the idea that you have people meet with one another, that you have conferences that are properly designed to deliver value. The key there is understanding what value needs to be delivered. The other thing is I don't disagree with the notion that we need to draw on donors, many donors, to provide the kinds of opportunities that the national side cannot provide for themselves because they are strapped. And they are needy in many respects when it comes to this sort of thing. But what I'm probably unique on the panel for having been the receiver of this sort of thing for the 3.5 years more that I was there and for the 2 years that I was the head of the department, and saw that what was often thrown at the people in my department was not very well directed. It wasn't based on careful and close collaboration with the managers in the departments that were being affected. There were trips being made that were being made solely because there was a trip to be made without any real delivery on the other end back in our direction, and no real focus before the trip was made about what it was exactly that they intended to achieve by this expenditure of money. And most important of all, under the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 2 and 13, my obligation, one that's going to be enforced on me by the European Court on Human Rights eventually, there are 2 cases pending now, is I have to conduct expeditious investigations that lead to evidence that will allow me to make a good prosecution decision about the matters that I'm responsible for and provide reasonable means of redress. Now, if I'm taking people out of the work environment to put them in conferences or send them on trips or give them education opportunities or training, it